Well, again, good morning. Welcome to Holiday Hill Church. I am Joshua Slocum. Pastor Albert will be back with us next week. He's on vacation somewhere. I don't really know. I actually try to make it a purpose not to talk to him while he's on vacation. You literally have to die for me to have to call him during vacation. That's not a challenge, by the way. I'm just saying that's the level it has to get to for me to actually pick him up in the contacts and give him a shout. Just FYI. So he's enjoying vacation. He'll be back starting tomorrow. You guys will see him more than likely on next Sunday, if not beforehand. But in the meantime, you're stuck with me as we go through our series in the book of Romans, specifically chapter 8. And I was mentioning in the announcement video earlier, we're going to be in Romans chapter 8, starting in verse 18 today. So if you have your Bibles, turn to Romans chapter 8, verse 18. If you don't have a Bible, we have Bibles up front under your seats. And if you don't feel comfortable leaning forward or having to look through the table of contents, we're going to have the verses on the screen anyway, so we got you covered. Again, live stream, hi, how you doing? Glad you're here. And we've been going through Romans chapter 8. If you were here last week, we talked about the context of adoption. And Paul in this letter continues on, and we talk about hardships. And there's a lot of hardships that we can face on the day to day. One hardship I would mention, and one of the earliest ones I think that we can all relate to, would be the context of bullying. Bullying is real, and it's gotten, like, the term itself has gotten so popular that it's almost gotten watered down, like, this person's bullying me. Why are they bullying you? They're wearing a University of Florida Gators hat. I feel attacked. Just because they have poor life choices doesn't mean you're being attacked. Leave them alone. So, I mean, that's just how it is. But there is legit bullying sometimes. And sometimes it's things that, you did and said something just one time, and then the people around you will never let you live it down. Those people are usually called your brothers and sisters, by the way. But beyond that, sometimes it's things you didn't even ask for. You didn't ask for big ears that you have to grow into. You didn't ask for an awkwardly shaped, birthmark of the state of Nevada. You didn't ask for those things. But sometimes people will pick on you for those things. And sure, the picture right now is kids, but let's be real. Kids can sometimes be mean, but adults can even be meaner. And the worst part is adults should even know better. And sometimes they don't. We have this old adage in life, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Sometimes words can hurt. Sometimes words do hurt. A good friend in a moment of laughter can say that you're stupid, and that's no big deal. But then there's certain people in certain times in certain places, they can call you stupid, and man, that cuts. There's certain times that words can be said to you, and it may not be what was said, it may be who says it. Let's be real. We've all been in this moment, not necessarily bullying, but the words all are still the same, right? It's when your mom and your dad and your grandparents look at you, and they'll say to you, I'm not angry, but I'm disappointed. Oh, straight to the heart. Straight to the heart. That could be a hardship, an early one that we deal with. Here's another one. The financial hardships. The financial crunches of life. I mean, there's been a lot that's happened in these last few years. Many of us have gone from certain jobs to another. Many of us are entering the job force in the career field for the first time. And on paper, there should be jobs. On paper, we drive down Southside Boulevard. Everyone's hiring. Everyone's hiring. But the problem is sometimes the places that are hiring are only hiring part-time. And the problem is we have full-time needs. And the other thing is maybe we're in our job, but though the pay hasn't gone up, everything else has. That's just the reality of what we're dealing with right now. And then we have these statements, right? Like, if my father saw the price of gas right now, he'd be rolling over in his grave. Everything's going up. And then there's the fear, and then there's also the financial burden, and then the financial stress, especially if you have a family, moms and dads. I think we've all been there at some point. We want our kids to have the good birthday party. We want our kids to have those great milestone moments. We want our kids maybe to have that class ring. We want them to have the things that maybe even we didn't have. And we put that stress, that added stress on us. And again, things cost money. And then maybe there's sometimes we have to make the decision between, do I pay for the electric bill, which again is skyrocketing, or do I pay for the grocery bill, which is also skyrocketing? I choose the electric bill, which means I get to sit in the cool comfort of my home and starve to death. financial hardships. And it's like, well, what can I do? Well, maybe I can panhandle. But you don't want to do that, because if you do, you're going to hear about it on our neighborhood watch page. And you don't want to be those people. You don't want to be the person they're talking about on the neighborhood page on Facebook. Some of you are laughing because you've read the neighborhood page this past week. Oh my word. Yeah, you don't want to be those people. You don't want to be the guy holding up a sign that like will work for food. You know, you don't want to be that person. You got a whole lot of stress. And then there's what I call, figuratively speaking, it's called the death of 1,000 cuts. It's not really one thing. It's a whole lot of little things that just stack up one on top of the other. And it doesn't seem like things can work out. Okay, so you got financial stress. We're going to budget. And you know the anniversary's coming up. And it's going to be one of those round number anniversaries, right? It's going to be like the 10-year, the 20-year, the 40-year. And we're going to be like Carl and Ellie from Up. We're going to have a little jar. And we're going to put the money in the jar. And it's going to fill up. And here we are. We're going to go on our dream vacation. We're going to take our dream trip. We're going to get our dream car. And then a tree falls through your roof. Okay, no problem. One more time. We're going to do it again. We'll fill it up. We'll fill it up. We'll fill it up. The check engine light comes on, and it's a head gasket. Those are expensive, by the way. And I work and I work and I work. And sometimes we may feel like a truck in like the mud, and the tires are just turning, and I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Nothing's really working out. What can I do? And it seems maybe that we feel alone. Maybe we feel like it's us versus the world, and it just stacks up, and sometimes it feels like quicksand. We move, we try to get out of it, but man, we're in over our head. Maybe it's like a snowstorm. Floridians don't understand snowstorms, but people up north, if you lived up north, you do. And sometimes you just feel stuck, and you just feel like, I'm just going to give up. I'm just giving up. Sometimes the hardships can be real. Sometimes the hardships can be things we did not ask for. We did not expect, we did not see coming. In the last few years, many of us have said goodbye to people we were not prepared or ready to say goodbye to. We have brothers, we have sisters, we have moms, we have dads, we have best friends, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and sadly for some, even children, we have had to say goodbye to, and we were not ready for it. We weren't ready. And in our hearts and our minds, we say to ourselves, they were the best of us. They were the best of me. How do I wake up tomorrow and just do tomorrow? What does that look like? And even if it does look like something, do I want to even do what it looks like? Hardships. We made the promise till death do us part, but death do us part wasn't supposed to happen for another 20, 40, 50 years. And it happens sooner rather than later. Or maybe it's, I made the promise, sickness and in health. And you say these things at a wedding altar, but you never really actually think that you're going to have to cash that thing in. When the doctor comes in and his badge says oncology, you never think that, like, we're here. And we're here now. And that can be hardships. The Apostle Paul, in the passage we're getting to today in Romans chapter 8, addresses in part those hardships and how we can navigate the hardships of life. Now, I did this last week, and I'm going to do it again for those that may have missed it. Because I'm always a fan of what you know as context. It's one thing to take a verse and be like, oh, there's the verse. But what's going on? What's happening? So what I want to do is we're getting into Romans chapter 8 today is I want to give you a brief Romans, a background, basically, a context of the book of Romans. Romans was written by one of the apostles. His name is Paul. He didn't always go by that name. Originally, his name was called Saul of Tarsus. And he was trained under what's called the Pharisaical order, the Old Covenant way, the Old Testament way, the Jewish traditional way of life. And he hated Christianity. He hated those who really followed after Jesus. He was by far not a fan of them at all. But then something amazing happened. A miraculous event happened. The incarnate, the embodied Jesus Christ appears to him on a road to a town called Damascus. And from this moment, Saul's life gets turned upside down. Everything he thought was real is no longer real. Everything he thought was fake is now more real than ever. And he's wrestling with this. And as he wrestles with this, he answers a call to ministry, specifically to be a missionary to the non-Jewish, aka Gentile, community. That was his goal. And what he would do is he would travel around the Roman Empire to the major towns. Again, the cultural equivalent would be like if he would do it in this day and age, he'd be hitting cities like Miami, Orlando, New York, LA, Las Vegas, Houston, Phoenix. He would, and even internationally, he would go to places like London. He would go to Madrid. He would go to Berlin. He would go to these huge hub type cities where people are going to. And what he would do is he would preach the gospel, Jesus Christ crucified and resurrection for the forgiveness of sins. And when he would get a few converts together, when a few converts would be made in these major cities, he would assemble them together, an assembly of Christians together. And this is what would be called a church. Once a church was assembled, Paul would then move on to another city. But along the way, sometimes these churches would not make the best of choices because this is a fledgling thing. This is kind of new. This is church 1.0. This is version 1.0. For people that have no background in religion or God or Jesus or like the monotheistic one God religion, this is all new for so many of them. So sometimes Paul had to write letters to them to basically give them an idea of what you should and should not do. These are called letters. Sometimes they're called epistles. We sometimes call them books of the New Testament. Not all of them are letters by Paul, but many of them are. And many of the letters he wrote were to churches he started. For example, he started a church in Galatia. He started a church in Ephesus. He started a church in Corinth. He started a church in Thessalonica. These are your books, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, Galatians, Ephesians. These are the ones he wrote to. Sometimes he would write to people that he was also ministering to in training, people like Titus and Timothy, which are your books 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus. He would write to him about ministry. And there's sometimes he would write in these letters and he would address things you didn't think you'd have to write to a church. For example, to the church of Corinth. The communion can't be a drunk debauchery beer fest. That's bad. Sip the wine, don't gulp it. He had to tell them this in Corinthians. It's crazy. Or Timothy, no, I don't think it's really good that we should have pagan theology taught in our churches. Tell that person to shut up. Again, things you never thought you'd have to tell a group of church people, like, don't do that. He sometimes would have to tell them to don't do that. And that was many of his letters. But then there were some letters like Romans that they were written to a church in a town, in this case, the Church of Rome, the Roman Empire, that he didn't start this church. This church was already established. Now, many people believe that the book of Romans, the intention of Paul was basically to introduce himself to this church and hopefully to make a base of operations so he could start moving onto the westward end of the empire, particularly Spain. He wanted to go westward. Some theologians think he made it, some think he didn't. It's a point of contention. But it seems that the motivation of the book of Romans was Paul writing to this church basically as an introduction. But what we got courtesy of this letter is, as I said last week, it was basically the magnum opus of Paul's theology. This is the grand symphony. When it comes to the word count, this one's pretty high compared to a lot of the other letters. But one thing I want to mention as we get into Romans 8:18 right now is this. Again, I said Romans 8:18. When they read this, there wasn't a Romans 8:18. It was just the letter from Paul to the Church of Rome. It was a straight shot. It was a whole letter from beginning to end. Chapters and verses were put in later, at a later date and time, for the point of reference for people like me and you. That's what it was there for. So when this church would get down and read this thing, it wasn't like, okay, and God said, let there be light, verse 2, and it was good, verse 3. The verses were for reference points. It was a straight letter from beginning to end. In the final verses of last week, Paul talks about suffering and how sometimes we have to suffer like Christ suffered. And now he's transitioning in verse 18 to what hardship looks like and also our change of perspective. And that's where we get into chapter 8, verse 18, and we have a change of focus. Paul's encouraging us to have a change of focus. Read along with me verses 18 through 19. And here's what we have. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. A change of focus. Now, the challenge for this passage that we have today is that there's a lot of theology going on. It's like, how do I make this into like bite-sized morsels and try to get us out like not at 3 p.m.? That's the goal anyway. So, but again, he's talking about, I consider the sufferings of this present time not worth comparing to the glory that's revealed to us. He's talking about the hardships we deal with. But then in America, sometimes we could be, let's face it, in our country, we could be spoiled. We could have what we call first world problems. Many of them became internet worthy, right? First world problems. Like here's the first one. The Wi-Fi is free, but it's just too slow. My hardships I'm going through life, guys. The hardships of slow Wi-Fi. How about this? I'm in my house, got a roof over, I'm hungry. I look in the pantry. There's no food made, just a bunch of ingredients to make the food. Oh, pray for me, guys. I'm going to deal with lots of hardship right now. And oh, here's the worst one. Does anyone feel this one? The fact that your laptop is running low on battery, but the charger is in the room next door. You have to get up. You have to close the laptop, walk a whole 10 steps to pick up the charger, plug it in, or worse, you plug in the charger, and then you realize the cord doesn't reach to where you're sitting or lying down. Hardships, right? We need to let's assemble the prayer circle, folks. Let's get the deacons together. Let's get the oil. We're going to get through this together. It is well with my soul. We're going to do it, guys. We got this. Trust in the power of the Lord here. First world problems. Paul's not really talking about our first world problems here. He's talking about something deeper than this. In the book of 2 Corinthians, when he was writing to this church that he started in Corinth, he talked about some of the hardships he dealt with. Sometimes they were sleepless nights. Sometimes it was going hungry and not having a meal when you were hungry. Not just that, it's not having the ingredients. You don't even have the ingredients. Sometimes it was beatings. Sometimes it was imprisonment, which in connection to that was poor treatment, mistreatment, intentional harsh treatment. These are the hardships. Sometimes we make choices and decisions, and those decisions, sometimes we didn't ask for it, but they kind of happened. Real hardships that we deal with. Those are the things that Paul had to deal with. I heard this from someone yesterday. I think there's some wonderful truth to that. If you read the Bible from cover to cover and we were to give it to like a PR company, they would eliminate over half the thing. I mean, think about it. There's some stuff in there that, and it always gets me tickled when I hear Christian radio's tagline. Many Christian radios say this, that it's safe for the whole family. I'm like, have you read the Bible? Okay, if we gave this to a PR team, they'd edit out over half of it. There are people dying, and sometimes they're children. Sometimes there are harsh words, and sometimes they're not very G or PG phrases. The Bible is not just for kids. It's for adults. And sometimes adults deal with adult problems. And even more tragically, sometimes kids and teenagers have to deal with adult problems, which is an adult problem in and of itself. Some people shouldn't have to deal with this, but then adults have to deal with adult-sized problems. And those are the real hardships. Those are the real things. That's terrible. And what Paul's saying here, and by comparison, he's actually saying in these verses, compare this like there's hardships, yes, and it's terrible, yes, but change the focus. In other words, compare that to what eternity is and what eternity will look like. The book of James says it like this: our life is but a vapor. Take a pot of water, put it on your stove, set that baby on high. They say a watch pot never boils. We're not waiting for it to boil. We're just waiting for it to steam. Your life is but a vapor. Do you see the steam coming off the pot and then it just kind of fades away? In comparison to your eternity, life is kind of like that. There's a fancy word for it. The $10 word is evanescence. And yes, that's where the rock band got the name. It's an evanescence. It's here for a while and then it disappears just as fast. In the realm of eternity, in the span of eternity, even if you've lived to 100 and 110, in the span of eternity, it's not even a drop in the bucket. Yes, we deal with hardships now. Yes, they're painful now. Yes, sometimes they're even unfair. But as followers of Jesus Christ, we have a better hope. And Paul's encouraging this church, focus on the better hope. Focus on the better hope. And sometimes that can be difficult because sometimes, guys, we deal with bad decisions and we deal with bad consequences. But you know what? We also have to deal with a better ending. Verses 20 through 21. Read along with me, guys. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. That's a lot of words. And again, when you hear these words and phrases, it can sometimes sound very upside down. What's he going with? He's talking about this context that is creation, that creation is yearning for something good. Creation is yearning for something big. And then these things happen and it went bad. And what he's talking about is he's talking about like day one creation. Sin entered the world, and with that sin came consequences. Adam and Eve chose to rebel against God. And as a result, themselves and their progeny, their descendants, all of us dealt with the consequences of that sin. We're now ingrained in it, but it didn't just end there. Creation had consequences for that sin as well. Those decisions, as bad as they were, also had bad consequences. And these are the results of sometimes the bad consequences of the bad decisions. And when I think about bad decisions, sometimes they can be a little cheeky, especially from hindsight being 2020, from a historical perspective. And I want to present to you one that you may or may not know about. Let me tell you about the Nintendo PlayStation. And no, I'm not some old guy who just misspoke. It was the Nintendo PlayStation. See, back in the 1980s, around 88, 89, Nintendo wanted to go into the next level of graphics and gaming and technology. And they partnered with a company known as Sony to create a gaming system that could work in conjunction with their up-and-coming Super Nintendo. So what would happen is they'd have a disk drive system and also a system you could put the cartridge in on top. And it was going to be called the Nintendo PlayStation. And Sony made some of the prototypes and they even called it the Sony PlayStation. And what happened was Nintendo started getting worried because it doesn't say Nintendo on that one. It says Sony. What happens, but it's a Nintendo controller. What happens if Sony takes more of the rights? What happens if they get more of the cut of the money than we want to? And what ultimately happened was they couldn't come to an agreement on who really owns what and who gets a cut of what. And as a result, Nintendo pulled away from the deal entirely. So in the early 90s, Sony now has a gaming system and no one to give it to. What can we do with this gaming system that we have made by Sony called a PlayStation? Nintendo created their own worst nightmare. They're responsible for the PlayStation. They're responsible for their top competition. Bad decision. Who cares if Sony got 65%? Because now they're getting 100. Just saying. Here's another one. What about Coca-Cola? Coca-Cola has a history of bad decisions, right? Some of us from the 1980s remember the New Coke debacle. Remember that one? Or how about this one? During the Great Depression, there was a company, a failing company in the Carolinas called PepsiCo, and they groveled to the Coca-Cola company, begging Coke, please buy our company so we can save ourselves and at least come out respectable with some money. And Coke says, no, Pepsi, we're not going to buy you. We'll let you die instead. And the board then said, well, I guess we'll just try to hold it together and maybe Pepsi can live to see another day. We'll do our best and hopefully Pepsi can live on. Coke had the chance to kill him less than 100 years ago, and they said no. But then this one has to be my favorite. One of the earliest dumb decisions ever made by Coca-Cola. John Pemberton was a Civil War veteran. He was a chemist. He was for the Confederacy. And he created this like health tonic known as Coca-Cola. And you go to the drugstores, the soda shops, to get a nice tall glass of Coca-Cola. It was bought by a guy named Asa Candler. And Asa Candler is now the owner of Coca-Cola. And people came to him and said, maybe we should put this thing in bottles and distribute it out. Asa Candler did not see why would someone want to go do that? Why would someone want to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola? You just go to the drugstore. Everyone knows you go to the drugstore and if you can't get it in a glass, why would you want to get it anywhere else, any other way? This is the dumbest idea ever. But two guys in Tennessee convinced Asa Candler, well, if you don't believe it, well, how about you sell us the rights to bottle it for $1 whole. He signed the contract. That plaque and that dollar is in the Coca-Cola Museum in Atlanta to this very day. Sold the bottling rights to Coca-Cola for $1 whole. A dollar by which, that's just a display. He never collected it. They still owe him the dollar. I hope they can find it. You sold the rights for $1. Man, bad decisions. Bad decisions. And with bad decisions come bad consequences. Bad consequences. And sometimes the consequences are the results of things we weren't even responsible for. And this is where creation lies in this one. We weren't even responsible for this. Many of us have been in this situation going to school. Sometimes there's a kid in your class that's acting a fool, that's messing around, or maybe they're playing pranks and they're not like coming forward about it, and the teacher goes up, okay, who's responsible for this? And then there's that awkward dead silence. I mean, you didn't do it. I didn't do it. Our friend didn't do it. Clearly someone did it. Or maybe it's a group over in the corner, and it's always that same corner, isn't it, in the classroom? It's always that same group of kids, but they're being rowdy, they won't talk, they're talking, they're not paying attention. And then the teacher says the worst thing you can ever say to a kid in a classroom: if you don't straighten up, you won't have recess. For who? All of you. No! Just the worst thing you can experience as a kid in school. No recess. The one thing, you have to sit in silence. You have to sit next to the wall and do your schoolwork or read a boring book. Who wants to do that? I wanted to go on the slide. I wanted to play tag. I wanted to go on the swing set. Now, because of someone else's stupid, poor decision making, I now have to suffer the consequences. As we get older, I wish I could tell you it gets better, but sometimes, guys, it just gets worse. Sometimes companies like Coca-Cola and Nintendo make stupid decisions, and as a result, cuts need to be made. Sometimes Discovery decides to buy Warner Media, and your six-figure job is now a non-paying job, and you're officially unemployed. You didn't make the decisions. You didn't drop the ball. But because someone else dropped the ball, I get the brunt of this thing. And maybe as a result, I lose my job. I get cutbacks. Or even worse, maybe I keep my job, but what happens as a result is there was someone also in my department who didn't keep their job, and they figured it would just be a cost-cutting maneuver to give me their job. Did they give me a raise? No. It's twice the work. Have a good day. But at least you got a job. I'm more stressed. What's my heart rate? I don't know, but here's where we are. I didn't make the decision. I got voluntold. Someone did it for me. I didn't mess up, but I deal with the consequences. Or here's one for you. Sometimes guys and gals will go up on stage behind big, beautiful podiums, and they'll make all the greatest promises in the world. Vote for me and your taxes will be lower. Vote for me and the economy will be better. Vote for me and we will have a beautiful, clean utopia of peace and perfection and clean air and water. And all you have to do is vote for me. Give me your vote. And we trust them. Or maybe we don't trust them. We see through their lies. But your stupid neighbors didn't believe the lies that they voted for them, and now they're in office making all the stupid decisions you knew they were going to make, but yet I'm the one who has to pay the taxes. I didn't vote for them. Heck, I even got a bumper sticker that says I didn't vote for them. Doesn't matter. You still got to pay the taxes. You don't get to pick and choose. But I didn't choose them. But you still deal with the consequences. Bad decisions, bad consequences. Adam and Eve sinned, and there were consequences. And some of those consequences fell on things and places and stuff that wasn't decided by those things, places, and stuff. This is what Paul's referring to. Bad decisions, bad consequences, but we have a better future. But right now, creation is littered in sin. An illustration I've heard about before is consider the world to be a broken theme park. It's a broken theme park. Like, a theme park's supposed to be fun. A theme park is supposed to be enjoyable. A theme park is supposed to be a place where I can rest and relax and get away and watch my kids have a good time. Or maybe I get to go have a good time. Or maybe I bring a special someone in my life and we have a good time together in the theme park. We get popcorn and we get snacks and we ride rides. But this is a broken theme park. It's one of the ones you see like in a horror movie. So, for example, you get in the tilt-a-whirl, and then the tilt-a-whirl like ejects you out and like throws you 50 feet into the ground. Or maybe, again, you go up to the snack stand and you ask for the popcorn, and there's like maggots crawling in the popcorn. Do you have a non-maggotless popcorn, please? This is not what I wanted. I expected this, but I'm being given this. This is the result and consequences of sin on this planet. It wasn't just spiritual, it's physical. There were consequences for this. And Paul is referring to the consequences of sin. This is a broken theme park. Creation didn't ask for this, but the decision was made. The consequences of Adam and Eve resulted in this. And now we live in a broken world. And if I haven't given enough examples already, gosh, I think I don't need to convince you anymore. We're pretty broken. We're pretty broken. We're a broken world. Sometimes life is not fair. It's not. Sometimes the things that happen to us we didn't ask for. Sometimes we did because we ourselves made stupid choices. But that of itself is evidence of a broken world. We live in a broken world. And it's like a messed up, twisted theme park. But Paul tells us about a better future. And in this future, the curse is reversed. The curse is reversed. Verses 22 through 25 says this. For we know that the whole of creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have been first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for the adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we are saved. Now, hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. We wait for it with patience. That first half, Paul's essentially saying there's moments in creation, there's moments we wait for it. It's almost like a rumbling, almost like childbirth, like you feel that pain. And again, that broken theme park analogy, like the theme park shouldn't be doing this. The broken theme park shouldn't be this way. There should be something better. Where's justice? Where's peace? Where are these things? And again, it hurts. It hurts us when we see people treated unjustly. It hurts when we see good people have bad things happen to them. It hurts when bad people have good things happen to them. And we say to ourselves, we know it in our heart, our soul, this isn't right. This isn't the way it should be. Something should be done here. It shouldn't look like this. It shouldn't play out like this. That's the pain that he's referring to. In other words, what's going on here? But then he says, again, our change of perspective, there is a hope and a future, followers of Jesus Christ, that we have. And that future is eternity. And with that eternity, it's not just heaven itself. It's creation itself where the curse is reversed. The curse comes to an end. And it's going to come to an end in relation to eternity. It's going to come to an end soon in relation to eternity. But in the meantime, we hope. In these final verses, he mentions, now hope that what is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? He acknowledges it rightfully for what it is. This hasn't happened yet, and that's why we hope. As followers of Jesus Christ, we've been given multiple examples of what this is, what it looks like. The Holy Spirit has put in us a desire to see redemption take place, and we believe in that redemption. And Paul's telling the church of Rome, hold on to that hope, hold on to that faith. Yeah, it stinks right now, but in time, it's going to get better. Who put that feeling inside of you? It was the Holy Spirit of God telling you something's wrong. Something needs to be made right. The scales need to be balanced. The curse of this planet is going to be reversed. And we see pictures of that. We see, first of all, the picture and the reality of Jesus Christ dying for our sins. But even throughout the entire Old Testament, we see types and shadows that point to this. I've shared this with you before. Much of Scripture, if not all of it, points to something and it points to someone. It is Jesus Christ and his death on the cross for our sins. That's what it's pointing to. But it's a picture. It's a picture. And because it's a picture, we hope. I have many pictures of my lovely wife. And here's one of them. It's my wife, Esther. That's her in one of her most favorite places. She's a fan of Disney, for those that didn't know. And that's her rocking her company, Travelmation. She, if you ever want to go on a vacation, she can help you out on that one. Shameless plug. I know I'm terrible. But I was looking through pictures that I don't know if you have wives that do this, but my wife does this. I'm like, I'm going to pick this picture. No, don't pick that picture. I look fat in that picture. I'm going to pick this picture. I'm not wearing makeup in that picture. I'm going to pick this picture. I don't like the way that dress looks in that picture. Then why did I take the picture? Like what? Oh, whatever. So this is the picture we could both agree on, apparently. I'm like, I like that picture. Yeah, I like that picture too. Okay, I'm picking this picture. So here's a picture. And I have plenty of pictures. I have pictures over in my office. I have one on my nightstand at the house. But what is a picture? A picture is just a frozen moment in time, and it represents the person. A picture of a person is that. It represents the person. Many of us have pictures on our phone. Many of us love scrapbooking. Many of us have photo albums. Many of us have like pictures and scrapbooking material, but we haven't really done anything with it yet. And we never are, but we're going to convince our spouses that we will someday do something with it. But in the meantime, it's just going to be a fire hazard. But we have lots of pictures, and it represents something. In this case, this represents my wife, the good memories we have together, the fun times we have together. No one takes pictures in the middle of the argument, really. It's always fun times, vacation, times with family, times where you went out and did something amazing, you did something adventurous, times where you were just hanging out and it just seemed like a special moment to snap a picture. That's what pictures are. They represent something. So I have this picture of Esther right here. And let's say, for example, I have it in a frame, and I have this framed picture of Esther. And then my wife, Esther, walks into the room. And then here she is in the room, my bride, who I love, who I vowed sickness and health, death do us part. And I'm holding this picture. And I say, oh, Esther, how I love you so much. And then I start making out with the picture of Esther. Mwah, 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 mwah. Again, she's standing right there, right? She's standing right there. As I'm loving this picture, you're the best ever. I love you so much. You're my everything. While she's standing right there, all of your faces pretty much say the same thing. What on earth is wrong with this person? And that would be the right answer, correct? The real thing is here. The thing is here. The picture represented the thing. The thing's here. That's the representation. Focus on the real thing that the picture was representing. In this case, it was my wife. She's here. She's in the room. If she's in the room, I don't need the picture anymore. The hope is this. The hope is there's going to be a day where we don't have to hope anymore. The pictures come to an end. The hoping comes to an end. And when it does, that means the real thing is here. Hope officially goes out the window. We don't need that anymore. We're here and we're present. And it's the real thing. And it's the thing we've waited for. It's the thing we've longed for. With the rest of the followers of Jesus Christ, for all the context that was eternity, for the curse to be reversed, here it is. And it's here and it's now. And the relief and the feelings that will go over our hearts and our souls when that day happens. It's a picture. But in the meantime, we wait. We look at the pictures. We hope and we wait. But when that day comes, all that's going out the window because the real thing is here. But in the meantime, we will hope and we will wait. Hardships are real. Hardships are real. And they hurt. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, it's not that bad. No, it is. It is sometimes. And it hurts. Sometimes the unexpected happens and we are definitely not prepared, as evidenced by the fact we call it the unexpected. Hardships are real. But Paul encourages this church in the same way he's encouraging us today. We change our focus and perspective. In the context of eternity, it's an evanescence here, guys. And we hope for something much bigger and greater and grander than the moments of hurt that we may have indeed found ourselves in. At this moment, we're going to have a time of invitation. I'm going to ask Beth and the worship team to come on up. And as they're coming up, I got a few instructions for us. This is our time, as we say, a time of invitation, a time of response. I'll be down here, and Miss Evelyn is going to be over here as well. So if you're a lady and you feel more comfortable praying with a lady or talking with a lady, I'll have Miss Evelyn over here for you as well. And maybe during this time, you're hearing us preach, you're hearing us sing, you're hearing all this stuff, and maybe the Holy Spirit of God is speaking something differently to you right now. Maybe he's saying, it's time to have something to hope in. Again, this hope is for the followers of Jesus Christ. Are you consider yourself a follower of Jesus Christ? If you don't know what that means and you want to know what that means, me and Miss Evelyn will be up here and be more than happy to talk to you about that. Maybe, again, those hardships are real and they're really real right now and they're hurting. And maybe you need someone to pray, someone to hold your hand and to go before spiritually the throne of God with you on your behalf to pray for you. Me and Miss Evelyn will be here and we'll be more than happy to do that for you. Maybe you're looking for what we call a church home, a place that you can rest and say, this is the assembly, this is the group of Christians I want to be with. Gosh, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you here at Holiday Hill if you haven't made that commitment yet. Or maybe you haven't followed through on what we call believer's baptism. You acknowledge Jesus Christ as Lord, but you haven't done an act of baptism since that decision. Looks like we'll be having a baptism in the next week or two. We can add one more, and maybe you want to talk more about that. But this is our time of response. So as the worship team plays and you feel the need to act accordingly, if you're looking for a moment, Now is your time.